Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Fire up the grill this 4th of July and enjoy ribeye steaks or burgers for an epic outdoor barbecue. Don't forget to grab some of Safeway's fresh produce for all your summer favorites. Safeway.com. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
A Colorado State basketball player is expected to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft tonight. Nick Clifford is from Colorado Springs. He played 3 seasons at CU Boulder and finished his college career in Fort Collins. He's a Coloradan through and through. You can watch to see where he gets picked tonight, starting at 6 p.m. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. Coming up, an update on the whistleblower lawsuit over immigration against Governor Polis.
He said that the governor, and I remember this word, thought that subsection 2, the criminal exception, gave him, quote, cover, close quote.
Then, an alarming report about just how fast we're losing groundwater in the Colorado River Basin.
It's bad and it's urgent.
An expert explains what can be done. Plus, a fan asked the local Colorado baseball team to change its name. They publicly shamed him. But 6 years later,
Give it up for Humpback Chubs, everybody!
It's Wednesday, June 25th. Here's the news in Colorado today. The whistleblower, the one who's suing the governor to try and get out of the requirement to share immigration information, spoke in court yesterday. The labor official, Scott Moss, wants the judge to say his department doesn't have to hand over the details about Coloradans who are sponsoring unaccompanied migrant children. CPR's Benta Birkeland listened to the hearing that stretched over the past 2 days. Benta, why is the federal government trying to get information on these people from Colorado?
This administrative subpoena was seeking information, as you mentioned, about the sponsors of unaccompanied minors. These are children who cross the border without their parents and have been allowed to stay in the U.S. for now. The federal order said they wanted to be sure these minors weren't being trafficked or exploited. But during the hearing this week, the state didn't provide any evidence that there were actually concerns these children were being exploited. We heard that on the stand, that Colorado hadn't looked into it or asked other agencies to try to verify if it was true.
And it sounds like Governor Polis wanted the state to hand over the information.
Yes, he didn't at first, but then he reversed course, and he asked the Labor Department to produce the data. The issue is that Colorado recently passed a law to ban the state from handing people's information over to immigration agents unless it's for a criminal investigation. So that's the heart of this case, whether or not this ICE request counted as a criminal investigation. Governor Polis decided it does, and that Colorado should turn over these records on the sponsors of these children. Information like name, address, phone number, employment information, and other things. The state official who sued Governor Polis disagrees with that judgment. He's pretty high up in the Labor Department, and he's a practicing attorney himself. He testified that the order was asking state workers to violate the law and that they could be held liable and fined tens of thousands of dollars for turning over this information.
So what did this official, Scott Moss, say on the stand?
Moss described a conversation he had with his boss, the director of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, who told him the governor's directive to turn over these records.
He said the governor didn't want to be accused of not helping ICE prevent any harms that might be happening to any children. He said he'd seen no evidence, not been told of any evidence of any such harm, but he said that the governor, and I remember this word, thought that subsection 2, the criminal exception, gave him, quote, cover, close quote.
Now, Benta, this hearing was supposed to wrap up yesterday, but I'm guessing it's going to overtime.
Yes, that's right. Some of the testimony went long. In fact, Moss was on the stand for about an hour and a half and still likely has another hour of testimony. On the governor's side, we heard from the head of the state labor department, Joseph Barella. This is Moss's boss. And Barella said it was a difficult decision, and there were a lot of deliberations within the state government about whether Colorado should comply with this federal subpoena.
The governor's decision was really looking at the grounds of the subpoena and the concern over the welfare of those unaccompanied alien children.
So basically, Barela reiterated the argument that Polis was in the right when he made this decision.
From watching these past 2 days, did you get a sense of what the judge is thinking?
I really couldn't predict what the judge might decide here. He did say there is a gray area when it comes to the law, and it will be his job to interpret it. He told the attorneys on both sides to expect a lot of questions from him when they present their closing arguments later today. ICE hasn't testified, and I do think the judge wants to hear from ICE before he makes a permanent decision on whether it's okay for the state to share this information with federal immigration authorities. That said, we could also have a temporary decision. The judge could rule that the state can't hand over this information until he gets more answers.
And Benta, ending with the bigger picture, has this case given you any insight on how the Polis administration is trying to walk the line on immigration enforcement right now?
Well, it's clearly a tough line for him to walk. It also came out during testimony that the Labor Department complied with a different ICE subpoena in March, but we don't know much about that. Two of the Democratic senators who worked to strengthen Colorado's ban on sharing information with immigration authorities, they testified at this hearing. And I think it's fair to say they're pretty angry or unhappy with Polis. It seems pretty clear that the intent of this Democratic law was supposed to prevent exactly this sort of situation that was happening. But you can also see how the Trump administration is finding all sorts of ways to try to punish states that it sees as standing in the way of its immigration efforts. And I think this is far from the last difficult situation Polis is going to face on this issue.
Public Affairs reporter Benta Birkeland, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
We get our water from two main places: what's above the surface in rivers and reservoirs, and what's below ground in aquifers. Bazi has more in a new analysis of the groundwater in the Colorado River Basin.
There's been a lot of alarm over the reservoirs, which are shrinking. But what about the water stored underground?
It is worse. It's about 2.5 times worse. The rate of decline of the groundwater is about 2.4 times greater than the decline in the reservoirs.
Jay Familietti is a hydrologist and professor at Arizona State University who's on the team that just put out a report quantifying this diminishing water supply. Groundwater is stored in the cracks in rock and in the spaces between soil and sand below our feet. And because it's hidden, we don't immediately see the effects. But Familietti says the decline is worse than the drought in the Colorado River's big reservoirs, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, in 2022.
So a lot of what we're doing is trying to get people to understand that this is a problem that's not going away.
It's becoming more urgent, he says, because right now the states along the Colorado River are negotiating who gets to use how much, starting next year. States lower down on the river may be told to cut back how much river water they use.
Very likely, the lower basin in particular will have to rely more on groundwater.
Parts of Arizona and Nevada are already affected by the decline of groundwater in the Colorado River's lower basin.
With respect to Arizona and the Colorado River Basin, it's bad.
Familietti spent 20 years looking into the loss of Colorado River water, and he's using some sophisticated tools to measure the decline.
What we ordinarily think about with satellites is a big camera or a telescope or a thermometer up there in the sky. This is more like a scale that responds to gravity variations that happen when a region gains a lot of water or loses a lot of water, for example, through groundwater depletion.
This satellite monitors the weight of water. It's like if you sit on a scale. The heavier you are, the more it gets pushed down. So now that we know how they measure the water, how do we save it?
How quickly or how slowly we use the groundwater depends on our decisions. So maybe we decide we don't want to eat as much beef, and so the world doesn't need to grow as much alfalfa, which is a big, very thirsty, water intensive crop that we grow a lot of in Arizona. We're past the point in like all of these places where we can do everything that we used to do. So now we have to make choices. And those choices, we have elected officials that make those choices for us. So we need to let them know how we feel.
And how we might be affected if water supplies are allowed to continue to diminish.
Just raise awareness amongst the communities across, especially the lower basin, that this groundwater is really their future, and it's their grandkids' future.
If you want to hear more about solutions to use less water or to bring in more into the Colorado River Basin, check out our podcast called Parched. There's a link in today's show notes. Batter up! Grand Junction's minor league baseball team plays a home game tonight, and they'll be stepping onto the field under a new name.
Give it up for Humpback Chubs, everybody!
There was a lot of enthusiasm for the Chubs as they debuted their new name recently, but that wasn't always the case. CPR Western Slope reporter Stina Sieg is here to explain why. Stina, let's start out with clarifying. The humpback chub is an amazingly named, threatened, and federally protected fish. But whose idea was it to rename the minor league baseball team after this fish?
So we have to go back to 2019 to tell this story. That's when Grand Junction native Ian Lummis, he was then 22, he fired off this tongue-in-cheek tweet, and he said that his hometown baseball team should change their name. They were then known as the Grand Junction Rockies, then affiliated with the Colorado Rockies. And Lummis is saying this is boring, especially with so many cool minor league baseball team names out there. He mentioned, the Birmingham Rumble Ponies, the Albuquerque Isotopes. Lummis thought, hey, let's get the Grand Junction team to pick something more fun, more local, something like the Humpback Chubs.
Definitely a lot more memorable. And why was there pushback for that idea?
Well, the team was not amused. They sent out this now infamous tweet, which they later deleted, and it said something like, chub is an offensive slang term for a word that, Arlo, I'm just going to say rhymes with election. And I think this is what we can only call an unforced error, because immediately it blew up, became totally viral. The team went on this blocking spree. They blocked me, they blocked Lummis, they blocked basically anyone from the public or the media who dared mention the words humpback chub on Twitter.
Wow, that really blew up.
Oh, completely. And I got to ask Lummis how that felt.
I was absolutely thrilled to have caused an organization like that to have a public meltdown.
I know. And Lummis became this momentary internet celebrity. He talked to the media, and he inspired thousands of people to sign a petition asking the team to change its name.
Okay, but the humpback chub is, as we said, a threatened fish. Were there any wildlife or conservation professionals coming in defense of Lummis's idea?
Oh, yeah, quite a few. Like Melissa Trummel. She's a retired fishery biologist with the U.S. Park Service. And she explained to me that the humpback chub can live up to 40 years in some of the most turbulent spots on the Colorado River. And she's just glad to see this fish get some public attention.
Our threatened and endangered and native species are worth cherishing and saving and celebrating.
The chub finally gets a spot in the sun. So 6 years have passed since the initial controversy. Fans and players are now embracing the alter ego. What has changed?
Well, for one, management changed. Harrison Shapiro took over as president of the team last year, and his first order of business was to revisit the humpback chub name and redeem it. He actually likes the name, though he made sure that when the new jerseys were designed, they were done carefully to avoid future controversy.
We didn't put any baseball bats in our Chubs logo for obvious reasons.
A wise move for sure.
And they only go by the name Humpback Chubs on home game Wednesdays.
On Wednesdays? Why?
Oh, Arlo, come on. Hump day.
Yep, should have known.
Yeah, and the rest of the time, they're called the Grand Junction Jackalopes. And Shapiro says a big part of minor league baseball is to embrace the fun and connect with the community in sometimes wacky ways. And the players are also on board. Here's shortstop Isaac Nunez.
Everyone was super excited about it. They were excited to put the jersey on, and we were excited to call ourselves the Chubs. So everyone loves it. Everyone.
It also seems to be a smart business move. The team has sold more Humpback Chubs merchandise in the last few months than they have Jackalope merch in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Okay, now, and guess who got to throw out the first pitch at one of the recent Chubs games?
Who was that?
Here's the godfather of the Grand Junction Humpback Chubs team movement, Ian Lummis.
Oh, he got his redemption.
He did. So did the fish.
Oh, man. Well, Stina, thank you so much. And please let me know where I can get one of those shirts.
Will do. You're welcome, Marlo.
Western Slope reporter Stina Sieg. You can see what the Chubs jersey does look like at the link in our show notes. Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Tom Hess. To stay up to date on what's happening in our state, be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Fire up the grill this 4th of July and enjoy ribeye steaks or burgers for an epic outdoor barbecue. Don't forget to hit the produce aisle for corn on the cob, veggie kebabs, and watermelon. Safeway.com. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.